All right, moving along. We are going to go ahead and cover the different playstyles of the different tanks. With me, I have my co-tank in my static, a good friend, and we've tanked, a couple tiers now together, and we have a great time. His name is Boots, and we're going to go ahead and introduce him right now. Hey, Boots, how's it going?
Hey, sorry, I gotta mute the stream because I just hear delay from everything.
That's completely understandable. I get tripped out whenever I hear something like that, too.
All right.
So, Boots, do you mind going over a little bit of the Paladin? Maybe talk about the play style and what basically you want to look out for, and your different mitigations and whatnot.
So the Paladin, compared to the other tanks, have the least amount of self mitigation. As you can see on the right side, all they have is Sheltron, Rampart, and Sentinel for themselves, and Hollowed. But that one doesn't. That's an invul. That doesn't count. But they have a lot more party mitigation and mitigation for other players rather than themselves. Divine Veil, when used, when a healer casts a healing spell on the Paladin, it gives a shield to the rest of the party members. Passage of Arms is the 15% on the bottom with the wings. Anybody inside the wings gets that 15%. You got Cover, which kind of a niche use, but yeah, as Chrono mentioned in the chat too, you can also pop yourself by casting Clemency. But back to Cover. Cover has a niche use. Basically, it transfers all damage from one target to yourself. And then you have Intervention, which is a 10% mitigation, but if stacked with Rampart and Sentinel is even stronger. Their Invuln, Hollowed Ground, has the longest cooldown, but it prevents all damage without any really negative effects to it. Arm's Length and Reprisal. Those are... Arm's Length is useful for dungeon pulls because it slows all mobs down, which means they attack you a lot less. And Reprisal is a 10% mitigation to all enemies around you, and is useful against raid bosses so that they have less 4 raid wide AoEs. Sorry.
All right, thank you, Boots. We're gonna go ahead and move on here.
Another thing, Paladin. Though I main tank as Paladin. Paladin is primarily an off tank. Passage of Arms, they don't really get much use out of it because it affects anybody behind them, and if they're main tanking, then it's hard to get that effect off to the rest of the party.
Anything else to add to that, or?
Nope, that should be it.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on then. All right, next here we have the Warrior. Felcleave, go burr.
Warrior is by far my least favorite tank class to play. Their biggest thing is the whole Felcleave. They, however, do have great self-sustain. They can easily keep themselves alive the longest out of all the tanks. Their Invuln is the shortest cooldown. It's Home Gang, the second to the bottom. Basically, their health will not go below 1% as long as it's active. Or, not 1%, 1, as long as it's active. They still need healing, unlike with Paladin, though. Their mitigation starts from the top is, I believe that's Thrill of the Battle, which increases max HP. It also restores the same amount of HP. Nascent Flash is one of the most useful ones. It shares a cooldown with Raw Intuition, which is the 4th one from the top. But if used on a party member, you can help heal them as long as you're doing damage as well. It's also great for dungeon pulls because you're constantly getting AoEs off, so you're restoring massive amounts of health to yourself as well as to somebody else. Next one is Equilibrium, which is basically just a strong heal. It restores your HP by a large amount for quite a bit more. And Shake It Off is their party mitigation. It grants a shield to all members of the party. And if Thrill of the Battle, Vengeance, and Raw Intuition are active when you use it, it increases the shield. Once again, you have Reprisal and Rampart, which all tanks have. Oh yeah, Vengeance isn't on here. Oh, that's at the very bottom. Never mind. Yeah, Vengeance is also a great one to use, especially against bosses. When they're using a tank buster, it transfers some damage from that attack over to the tank. Or not the tank, the boss. And yeah, Warrior's whole thing is huge burst phases. Use Inner Release, try to get off 5 Fell Cleaves. They're all guaranteed to do direct hit crit. And Infuriate, which you have 2 charges of, grants Nascent. Chaos, which allows you to use Inner Chaos and Chaotic Cyclone, which are upgrades of Fell Cleave and Decimate. Am I cutting off?
No, you are not. You're not cutting off. No, you're fine.
Okay.
If there's nothing else to add, we can go ahead and move on to the Dark Knight.
Yep. You can move.
Here we have the Dark Knight, the emotionally draining and depressed tank of them all, the one who wants to cut
Dark
himself.
Knight is considered probably the best tank to be the main tank as, just because of TBN. It's the shortest cooldown that they have, and it grants a shield, and if that shield breaks, it gives them a free use of Edge of Shadow or Flood of Shadow. The top one is Dark Mind. It reduces magic damage, which has a very niche use, but still useful for certain situations. Living Dead is possibly the worst invulnerability. When your HP is reduced to 0, you are granted Living Dead status, and if healers do not restore 100% of your total HP, you will die. Abyssal Drain is a long-range AoE that you can use to restore health. Great in dungeons to heal yourself, but generally when you're in a boss fight, you're using it off cooldown just for the extra damage. Dark Missionary is an AoE, is their party mitigation. It reduces magic damage taken by the whole party. Soul Eater is the third part of their GCD combo. It heals upon use. You got Reprisal and Rampart, like all other tanks. Also Arm's Length. Another thing, TBN, you can also use on another player, like I do with Telner. And basically, easier to break if you use it on a DPS rather than yourself. If you use it in an AoE instance, though. I think that's it for Dark Knight.
That's actually an interesting point, Crystal. Yeah.
It does last the longest.
Last the longest, yeah.
But and just to add, yeah, hello, Crystal here. something to keep in mind is as a healer main, make sure your healer for certain attacks does not heal you too early for Living Dead for certain fights. I've seen it. I've done it myself by accident. Where if it's a multi-hit tank buster, make sure your healer does not top you off to 100 too soon. Otherwise, you're not going to have an invuln anymore, and you're just going to die. E4S is a very good example of this. All right, I'm done.
Crystal did it to me in E12S, so there you go.
It happens. It happens. It's never on purpose. It's always an accident, but it happens. So, yep.
It happens, but generally, both parts of the Living Dead last 8 seconds. So they have 8 seconds to get their health reduced to 0, and then once their health is reduced to 0, it resets to 8 seconds again as Living Dead. So healers have 8 seconds to restore their HP up to 100%.
That's like 16 seconds. Jesus, that's a long time. Holy smokes. Okay. I didn't even think about that. All right. So if there's
actually 10 seconds each. Sorry.
Oh, 20 seconds then. Okay. Well, okay. All right. So let's go ahead and move on. Last but not least, we have the Gunbreaker, the flashy, twirling whirl blasty explosion tank.
And here's Gunbreaker. Honestly, Shin would probably be best to explain this one, but Gunbreaker is the highest DPS by a small margin, but still the highest DPS of the 4 tanks. Their burst combo is possibly one of the most fun things about them. However, because of their burst combo, they are considered the squishiest of the 4 tanks because they have no room for popping mitigation sometimes during that. Their invuln has the second longest cooldown because, much like Paladin, it does grant pretty much 100% damage mitigation, but it also reduces their health to 1 HP. Up top, you have Nebula, which is their strongest one. It's basically in comparison to Shadow Wall, Sentinel, and Vengeance. Camouflage is somewhat shorter cooldown, but still useful in a lot of situations. Heart of Stone is their shortest one. Reduces damage. It can also be used on other party members. And if you have the Brutal Shell buff up, which is the second attack in the basic rotation, you can grant the party member another Brutal Shell buff. Next one is Heart of Stone. It's AoE. It's similar to Dark Missionary with Dark Knight. Rampart, Reprisal, Aurora is pretty useful healing mitigation. Basically a free regen on whoever you use it on. And yeah. Anything you'd like to add, Shin?
I find Gunbreaker relatively straightforward as far as mitigation goes. While it has quite a bit of it, they're all pretty straightforward. Some of the other jobs, I should say, get kind of complicated with how you're supposed to use them. But Gunbreaker is I push this weapon or push this button and mitigation happens. So. So basically, like, Gunbreaker is what you would want to play if you were looking for a little bit more of a DPS kind of feel on a tank, and you do have to be careful because even though you're very mobile, once again, like, if you are not actually paying attention to what's happening, your mitigation is normally a lot weirder because you have to try to weave it in your rotation somewhere, so you get kind of punished a little bit more for mistakes a lot of times than you do with other tanks.
It is possible to weave in the mitigation in your burst combo, but at the same time it's very difficult.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It is much better to lose the DPS than to die. And yes, yes.
Crystal, you don't have to
Chronodaz
delay
is
anything for it.
actually-
It's
If you like this video, like, subscribe, or leave a comment. You can also join our Discord in the link below.
Is it always me and Crystal the first time?
Maybe.
And I think it's always me and Hannah the second time.
No.
Oh, it's the target.
Wait!
Oh,
Wait! You guys didn't kill the comment!
Oh man.
where are you going? Don't leave me.